Aloha, my name's Anna Covert, and I'm coming to you from my battleship here on the beautiful island of Oahu. This week on the Covert Code podcast, the topic is transformative leadership and growth, and I'm pleased to introduce D'Yanna Craighead. Often described as a unicorn in software and engineering industry, she has over 25 years of experience with big brands, including AT&T, IBM, Delta, and Disney. Today, she's here to share her new book, The Butterfly Code, which was published by Forbes in September of 2024, and tips for personal and professional growth. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
So to kick us off, can you give us a little bit about your professional journey and your vision behind the Butterfly Code and Butterfly Code framework?
Yes, so I've been in the tech industry for 25 years, probably a little bit over that now. I have a background in software engineering, so started out my career as a back-end Java engineer, moved into some business analysis and product management before moving into leadership and becoming a manager in the space. So now I've been at Disney for close to 14 years now. I got the amazing opportunity to launch some super incredible projects there. So I was on a team that launched My Magic Plus, which is, if anybody knows what Magic Bands and Disney Bands are, that project introduced that into the world. So being able to launch that at Disney World and then take another project similar to it to Disneyland called Max Pass. I was able to also do a virtual queuing system in Star Wars Galaxy's Edge at both parks, at both Disney World and Disneyland, before then taking Disney Digital Fast Pass to Tokyo.
Wow.
So I got to do some really incredible things before moving over to Disney Cruise Line. About 4 years ago now, where I got to launch 2 ships so far. So I launched the Disney Wish as a senior technology manager for onboard applications. I just recently launched the Disney Treasure, which was just a couple of months ago in November. And over the summer, I also got to launch our new island, which is called Lighthouse Point at Lookout Key. Sorry, at Lighthouse Point. Bit of a tongue tie. So really just, being in technology and being able to bring those projects to life has been amazing. But on the side and in my heart, I've always wanted to write. I've always loved writing and doing creative writing. And so I had been writing this book, The Butterfly Code, for many, many, many years. And then finally got to a place in my life where I felt like it was time to tell my story and put a framework around it versus just having my story, but having something people can learn from, something they can take from it and take away. And that's how the Butterfly Code framework actually came to life as a part of the book.
Wow, that is a really exciting. Are you still writing code? Or we love JavaScript. I actually have a technology company as well as my agency called Reactium, and so it's React code and which is all the power of JavaScript. Right, the power of JavaScript. Yes. Are you still coding, or are you more of a leadership position now?
I'm definitely more of a leadership position. I wish I had really some time to kind of still dabble in coding and just stay fresh with it, but it doesn't happen. So it's really about leading the software engineering teams, coming up with strategy and long-term plans and how we're going to implement technology, but I don't write code anymore.
So tell me, what is the butterfly framework?
The Butterfly Code framework is 5 steps. The first step being prepare, because you have to crawl before you can fly. And I'll dig into a little bit deeper into each one. But I'll run through them real quick. So the first one is preparation. You got to crawl before you can fly. Evolve, because you aren't meant to stay a caterpillar. Transformation, which is embracing stillness. It is embracing change while being still in your chrysalis. I got to make sure I'm saying those words right. Emerging, which is about strengthening your wings, and then transcend and soar, because this is who you are meant to be. And how that came about is I got fascinated with the journey of a caterpillar to a butterfly, and one day saying, "Man, it's so close to our lives sometimes, and how we're supposed to evolve and grow into who we are supposed to be." And if you think about a caterpillar going into a butterfly, like it literally is leaving the old version of itself behind and transforming. And I don't want to say that version dies, but it almost kind of does. Like it goes into a place that's alone. It goes into a place that's kind of tight and uncomfortable, but in that time, it is literally changing and evolving into a completely different version of itself, right? And when it emerges from that, it has these wings to fly. But the transformation and the emerging, it's a struggle, right? It's uncomfortable. And then when you are emerging, what people don't know about the life cycle of butterfly is as it's fighting its way out of the chrysalis, that's what's strengthening its wings. That's what's pumping the fluid to its body and to its wings in order for it to be able to fly. And so it can't fly without the struggle. And sometimes, right, that's our lives. And a lot of times that's our lives. And so when we're going through these things and these phases, um, we're trying to figure out, why is this happening to me, and what am I supposed to learn from this? But a lot of times these are the things that make us stronger, and these are the things that strengthen our wings to be able to evolve into who we are supposed to be.
Love that.
So yeah.
Really beautiful. I got just thinking about it, it is transformative. And I've just been recently getting very into meditation. And I feel like very similar that, I never was a meditator really, and I think it was because I thought that you weren't supposed to think about anything. And that was very hard for me. But now
Yeah.
that I'm doing these guided ones from Dr. Joe Dispenza is my favorite. But it is like when you start to really, the transformation comes from within, and it's a beautiful analogy.
Yeah, thank you. And so in a book, what I do is I talk about the framework, but then I apply for each phase, I tell a story about my own life, right? So it's not about just preaching to you or saying, "Hey, get out of your comfort zone and go change." I'm telling real life stories about some of the things that I went through in my own life and my own transformation to where I am today, because people see this amazing career, right? They look and they see me like out here. I have the best job in the world, by the way. Like I'm out here launching ships and I'm traveling the world, and they're like, "Wow, this is amazing," but they don't know the story of what I had to go through to get here, right? They don't know the struggles of also being a woman of color in technology, and right, that's not something that you see often, and my career trajectory is not going to be the same as most people. Right. And then just personally, like going through things like divorce and losing my father, and just different stuff like that. It's all in the book to kind of connect to people, to show like, despite my circumstances, yes, I was able to get to where I am today.
Wow, we have those two things in common. I'm also divorced and my father died, so I appreciate those as things that people can really relate to. And it is so much, storytelling is so powerful, for I think getting to that real nugget of how they can apply it. So, you've worked on some iconic projects at Disney. How did those lessons influence the Butterfly Code?
Oh man. So let's start with, getting out of my own comfort zone. So I had been in the industry 15 years before I got to Disney. And up until that point, it was really about going to work, do my job. I always had it in my heart to, I'm very career driven. So wanting to climb the career ladder. And really it was just getting to leadership and getting to manager. And so, like, that was enough for me, right? Not trying to climb any further than that, but that was enough for me. Um, but I began to evolve into someone that people began to look up to, right? That's not something I ever signed up for in my life. That's not I didn't one day say I want to be an inspiration to others, right? It just naturally happened, right? So being in this field, and by the way, there's only 3% of the computing workforce in the United States are Black women, only 3%, right? So it's such a small percentage. So not knowing that if I'm doing a volunteer event or I'm going and talk to kids about being in technology, that they are seeing me as something they hadn't seen before.
Mm.
And saying like, "Man, you're such an inspiration just by being in the room." And that started to like really hit me and impact me like, wow. And so learning that my career is bigger than myself, right? And then that kind of inspired me to want to push further and get more into senior leadership and executive leadership, even though I knew it was going to be an uphill climb because I didn't see myself there. When I say myself, first of all, you don't see a lot of you didn't at the time. I didn't see a lot of women in technical leadership roles to start, right?
Well,
But then to be
I think just in general, there's not, I mean, there's more men in leadership roles in most industries.
right, and then to see like a Black woman in a as a leader in software engineering, right? Like that was even more different. And so it was getting uncomfortable and getting out of my comfort zone and um allowing myself to push through the barriers of what was placed in front of me, but also starting like I said, comparing that to this evolution of myself. Right, so like I am definitely not who I was 15 years ago, and I do feel like I'm some people feel like I'm probably flying. I feel like, I'm probably still kind of strengthening my wings a bit because I have so much further to go. um, but that was kind of where, wanting to write this story and beginning to apply this framework to it because a lot of people are afraid to get out of their comfort zone, whether it's in technology, whether it's in your career, whether it's personally. It's just really about, talking people through this framework and saying, we're not meant to stay caterpillars
No.
and we have to move. And sometimes moving, whatever movement means for you, could be uncomfortable. But if I hadn't moved physically, like from where I was to Orlando and taken this career leap, I wouldn't be where I am today. So that's a big part of the journey in the story.
It is. It makes me think about when I think I was 12 or 13, and I was visiting my grandparents on my dad's side, and they were snowbirding in Florida in Fort Lauderdale. And I was nervous. I can't remember what I was nervous about, but I was angsting about something. And my grandfather said, if it makes you feel physically uneasy, like that's a good thing. That's why it's called trusting your gut. Like,
Mm.
should make you uncomfortable, right? Because it's new and you haven't done it. But that, made me. So can you tell me, who was your inspiration to pursue this path? That was something that was so rare, like, back in the day and even now.
I can't say that it was a person that inspired me to pursue because it definitely like I actually my mom and she knows this story now because it's on book, but she actually discouraged me. She was very supportive of me being in this role because she didn't understand it. She was like, what do you mean? And I went into technology back in 1993. So there like all these things that I can say this is this to be exists. Cell phones didn't even exist back
Right? You
then.
were always good with a computer and you were coding yourself, or how do you?
Well, like, yeah. So really, what happened? My grandfather, he was retired military, and he became a security guard at the conventions in Pittsburgh. And out of these conventions, people would leave things behind and stuff, and he would bring home stuff, right? It could be a box of potato chips or it could be a computer. Who knows, right? Like one day he brought home this Commodore 64. That's how old I am. And you plug this thing into your TV, and it was a keyboard. And I was probably like 10. I was probably younger than that. But it had this book, and you typed in this stuff that nobody understood what these lines of codes and these semicolons and squiggly things were. But you typed in stuff to make this sound go across the screen, or a bouncy ball bounce, and I didn't know at the time I think it was Visual Basic, or might be Basic, not even Visual Basic at the time. And that was my first introduction to like writing, like typing stuff, and figuring out that was what computer like programming was.
Wow.
So when I got to school, um, I told my guidance counselor I wanted to do something with computers, right? We didn't call it technology back then. I was taking like business applications, which was Microsoft Word and Excel, and learning how to take the data and create charts. And I really loved that. And so he said, well, why don't you try this computer programming class? I was like, what is computer programming? But okay. And I went to class and I realized, oh, that's what this thing was, when you get to code and you get to do things. But here's the thing. I walked into the class, and it was a group there was only like 6 kids in the class, and they were all white guys, right? And I'm going to say white nerdy guys, right? Like, so like,
Purple. That's some Urkel sitting in there. Yeah.
yeah, and here I was, captain of the cheerleading team, pretty popular student, and I was like, I don't think this is not the cool kids class.
Not my vibe, right?
Not my vibe at all. But I sat down and I loved it. I loved the class, and I could have made a decision then to say nobody looks like me in here. I'm gonna leave, but the thing that I had in common with them was this love for writing computer code.
Wow.
So I stuck it out, and I went to college, and I continued to be the only girl and the only person of color in these classrooms all the way, throughout my career. And so I look back and say these things were preparation, right? These things were preparation for walking into the room and being an only. And I got very comfortable being uncomfortable. And that kind of put me on my career trajectory. And once I learned like how much money you can make in this career, I was like, oh, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
This is a pretty lucrative thing. I don't have to go be a doctor or a lawyer. Like, that's not my vibe either. So, but yeah, that's how I came about. And I'm glad that I did, but again, not knowing that one day I would be inspiring somebody else to go do that or follow their dreams, because it doesn't matter what you look like. If that's what your passion is, follow it.
That's really cool. And, and it made me think about when I was writing my first book, which also published last year from Forbes. And I kind of at the beginning, my first draft I kind of thought people had to know how I learned digital marketing, because there wasn't any digital marketing when I was in school. I think you're probably a little bit older than me, but I was born in 83. So I was in college in 2001, my dad couldn't wait to show me Space Odyssey, which we realized quickly after. I'm like, Dad, this is so boring. This is like, I'd rather watch the news. And he's like, yeah, I remember it being better, but, but, we didn't have social media, which I'm grateful for, but there wasn't really any digital advertising. I had to teach myself digital advertising. And I kind of thought that was important at the beginning, and I had a lot of personal stories about that. And I really appreciated Forbes, my editors, being like, no one cares how you got how you learned it. They just care that you know it now. And I guess my long-winded question for that must have been, how did you pick the stories to share? And, it's the balance of like what you want to share and what and what kind of filter to put on it. I mean, like, did you feel like any kind of, what's my way I'm trying to say this? Like, how did you pick the stories that you were going to share about your personal life?
Yeah, so this goes into people asking me how long it took me to write the book, right? And it's like, I've been writing this book for about 10 years, right? And really because it started out as more of a journal, right? So there's a whole lot of stories that didn't go into this book, right? Started out as like me journaling and kind of writing out um, my life as a form of therapy, right? So it really, the first version of this book started with me going through my divorce, and becoming a single mother, right? And coming from a single mother, knowing what that struggle would and could be. So it just became this form of therapy. And, when I was done with it, it was so depressing, right? Like, so I was like, who wants to read this? And I kind of just sat it on the shelf because the next part of my journey hadn't begun, right? Which was, getting this opportunity at Disney, picking up my life with a 7-year-old and saying, I'm gonna go, right? And um I don't care that I don't know anybody down here. Like, this is, I felt in my spirit, like, this offer is coming and this is what I'm supposed to do. And so then from there, writing that part of the journey and like coming down and what it means to be who I am in the role that I'm at, and in kind of seeing my evolution of this sad phase, right? But like getting to this happy place. And then lo and behold, my father passes away. And that just took me to a whole different place because there was a story around that, because my father and I had a tumultuous relationship. He had he struggled with drugs. Um and he didn't raise me, and so, starting to tell the story of how we made amends and how in the last 5 to 6 years of his life, we got to a place of healing. Um, and really when my father passed away, there were there were some circumstances where people didn't understand why I was grieving.
Mm.
Right? Like, "Well, I didn't think you were close to your father," or, "I didn't, like," but that doesn't mean I love him, right?
Right.
And I'm not, I'm sad because I no longer have this opportunity to ever get this right. Like, there was just so much, and again, I'm pouring it onto the paper as a form of therapy, so that and now when family members read it, they're like, "Oh, I didn't get it," right? So the stories really were about getting to a place where I could be vulnerable. I could be vulnerable on paper, or on my computer, but now getting to a place where, like, let me open up and share these things and show people that yes, you see me on this ship in a beautiful ocean, but you had no idea that I dealt with that. You had no idea what it was like for me to have to raise a child by myself, in a city that I didn't know, and how I overcame that and how I just kept going. And so I picked stories that you see the highs and the lows so that people can take from it. Man, regardless of my circumstance, I can keep going, right? Like, I had, oh, she did this, but man, she was going through all of that at the same time. So that's really how I ended up picking and choosing the stories that I wanted to be, and being very careful, right? Like, there's so much more I could have talked about my divorce, but I have a 20-year-old daughter, and that's her father, right? And so she knows these stories. She knows some of the things that have happened, but it's not that's not her journey or her story, and I didn't want people to start asking her about it. Like,
Right.
"Oh, dang, your mom went through that," or "This is your father did that." So I chose to peel that back. I also chose to leave out things between me and my father that were a part of my mother's story, right? Like, being careful to say, like, that's my mother's story to tell. Even though I was a part of it, I don't want her to have to relive it or talk about it, or somebody say, I read that, and how did you feel about that? So there's definitely a fine line of, this is my story versus these are things that are could
Yeah.
impact other people. So
Right.
yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. And then, so pivoting to how people can use this in business, what are some tips that my listeners could take away right away on how to I guess, evolve in a safe way, framework?
Yeah, so I definitely use this as a mentoring tool. You know, and allowing people to see both personal and professional triumphs and stories of my own. But I actually take the framework in, and I have some guided journals as well that I use, but I help people um figure out who they are, right? Who are you? And who do you want to be, whether that's personal or professional? So, what I find is a lot of people have amazing, great ideas or things that they want to do, and they just don't know how to get there, or they feel stuck. So when I do mentorship, or I'm talking to people about the butterfly code, before we get to the framework, it's who are you today, right? Who are you right now, and who do you want to be? So in business, if you have a business goal to say, I don't know, I want to open a restaurant next year, um, I then walk people through, um, okay, let's break that down, right? So first and foremost, what are the steps or the things that you need to do to get there? Um, and write these things down as goals, right? And people may not believe it, whether that's writing it. I like to write actually in a physical notebook. Some people like to type it out. Move more. We're in a digital age. Some people want it electronically. Whatever that is, write these things down. I say your top, 5 to 6 things, and read them every single day.
Yeah. And
Because
manifest.
yeah, and even with the manifest, it's like you're if you're reading them, you're reminding yourself too that, "Oh, I wanna do this, I wanna do this, I wanna do this," and it's putting it into your mind that you can do it,
Yes.
and apply these things, and then helping people put a plan in place to say, "All right, now break these down into individual steps," and at the end of every month, go back and reflect. What did you do towards your business goal? Did you write, if you're writing a book, did you write 5 pages this month? Right? So keeping that in a cycle that keeps you accountable. And then I also try to do, when I'm mentoring, group mentoring sometimes, where I'll ask people if they want accountability partners, because
Mhm.
sometimes somebody is holding you accountable, then it's like, okay, somebody's going to ask me, did I write 5 pages today? Right. So let me go write that, or just be inspired or encouraged by somebody else to say you can.
Definitely works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's really how I do it. Like, I don't claim to be an expert at every business. It's really about, let me help you go after your goals, whatever that may be and however that is, and kind of using the framework to say, okay, you got to evolve, get uncomfortable,
Be
get
a
uncomfortable.
be a butterfly.
Yeah. Right. Like, go ahead, emerge, strengthen your wings, take that leap, do whatever it is that you feel like you need to do, because it's achievable, and then when you wrote that goal down a year from now, go back and read it. Go back and read who you were a year ago, and see if you're the same person. And if you are, that's a problem.
Yes. Thank you failed.
Yes. That's a problem. You haven't grown. You're just existing at this point. You're not living and evolving.
I actually love that. I read, have you ever read The Miracle Morning?
No.
Oh, it's a really great book. I read it, I guess, a year ago, and it's about, morning rituals and getting up and like reading every day and exercising. It's affirmations, visualization, silence, which is meditation, and then journaling. And I had never, I'm dyslexic. So the computer for me was the gateway, because I could finally read my own handwriting. I had spell check. And so writing things for me, like on paper, is torturous, but, but I got the app on my phone, and they had a Miracle Morning app, and I downloaded it, and they have journaling that I can speak to it, because I love to type. I'm a super fast typer, but I now every day, and I started doing it last year, this journaling at night, before I went to bed. And he said that every year he does on New Year's like a recap, and he'll go read his journal from the previous year on New Year's. And I did just that. I didn't even get, I didn't read all of it, but it was amazing of what I
Yeah.
had. It was. I was like, wow. And so I think you're 100% right. It's a really great tip.
Yes, 2 years ago, I wrote down I was gonna be a best-selling author, right? As I said it, and, Forbes Books reached out to me, right? Now the other like, they like, so it's just kind of like, say these things if that's what you wanna be, and watch how things will kinda fall into place, and come true, so.
Amazing. Well, I guess my last question is you mentioned that you're not quite, you haven't quite flapped your wings all the way out yet. So where do you see yourself? What's next for you?
I'd wanna do so many cool things with the butterfly code. Some I'm gonna keep to myself, but they're definitely technology related, right? Because, like, getting things a little bit more digital, getting more into speaking engagements to speak about this. But my biggest goal of what I want, the butterfly code to be is, I wanna do these what I call flutter bites. So in the book, I talk about this word flutter bites, which is a small piece of information to help you fly. Because I'm a tech, I'm a
That's
tech,
cute. I
right?
like it.
Do these flutter bites workshops and mentoring circles, and creating these groups that I call kaleidoscopes, because I didn't know that a kaleidoscope was a group of butterflies. I thought a kaleidoscope was just a
Oh, I didn't know that either.
yeah, like yeah, like I thought it was just that thing,
Yeah.
isn't it? But it also means a group of butterflies, which I've loved that, right? So
Yeah, flutter bite.
yeah. So, long-term goal is to start to create these small mentoring groups that can go on and inspire each other to continue to go on. Because a lot of times, I know me in tech and being a woman, right? I didn't have a group of friends that were in tech that were women, people I could go talk to. And so I got to a place where I could create that. And I did. And 2 years ago, 3 years ago now, um, birthday weekend, we all got together. Got into an Airbnb. It was 8 of us. We stayed and we spent the weekend setting intentions, working together and talking through um who we are today and who we want to be. And we held each other accountable. And a lot of us began to see our dreams like come to life because we were speaking and we were holding each other accountable. I have one friend, I mentioned her in a book, not by name, but um she just by being around the energy and the other women, she was like, you know what? I want to be in a better job. I want my career to grow and I'm gonna do that. And she ended up getting reached out to on LinkedIn, right? Didn't go after it. Reached out to her on LinkedIn. She got a job offer that was about $25,000 more in salary than what she was making, but it was in another state. And I was like, you gotta go, right? Like, like you gotta go
First
give it.
calling. Yeah.
Yeah, I say I always tell people, give it a try for a year. You could always come back or whatever. Give something a try for a year. If you don't like it, you can always come back. And she did. She did it. She gave it a try. She liked the job. She hated the place that she lived. And when that was when her year was up, she was like, I'm coming back. And she came back. And because of that, she knew her worth. So when she came back, she looked for another job. She got an offer. She was able to negotiate more money. And ultimately, in that year, from the time she left the one job into another job and came back, she doubled her salary, literally doubled her salary. And she talks about this today, where she's just like, this stuff works. Like whatever whatever you're inspiring and talking about working through these steps, like this works. And so now she tells people that and tells people like this works. And she's sharing that story. And she has people saying, you should mentor people with your story. And that's kind of where I want it to go. Like I want people to take this and learn from it and then expand and be able to have people that can mentor from it and learn from it and say, I use this framework,
To grow
and
a
so
community, but really like a community.
build a community, yeah. And so I would love right now, I'm doing them online, like doing these mentoring circles online, but I would love to get back to doing them like in person, over a weekend's time, long term doing destinations like, just
On a
that
cruise,
you
maybe. I
ain't
know.
no money, yeah, or we'll be on a cruise, or I'm
Yeah.
gonna go to Thailand or wherever, like, just letting it and seeing it grow because what what I love the most is seeing people be inspired and go after their goals and accomplish them. So just that is where I feel most fulfilled.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, I mean, I love me and my parents were big cruisers, and I just think it's such a my favorite part about a cruise is that when you just get there, you unpack, and then you don't have to. I hate living in a suitcase. When you got
Yeah.
on the line, you got to unpack, pack, unpack, and all the time you waste when you're on a cruise, you just unpack and then you just relax and everything else is taken care of. And there's so many of these events now that are going on cruises. Me and my mom were just at a mahjong tournament, my first one, and all the old ladies and they had mahjong cruising planned, and I was like, "You to do anything on a cruise," Yeah.
I just did one for my birthday. I just turned 50. So I just did a big trip and it was a 10-day cruise. I took 5 of my, friends and family, and there was 5 of us total, so 4. And we hit 10, it was 10 nights. We did 7 countries, in that time period. It was just amazing. Just
So
amazing.
relaxing. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Well,
So
thank you so much for being here. To learn more about the Butterfly Code, you can visit thebutterflycode.com, and also I'm sure it's on all of the places, Barnes& and Noble, Amazon, Target, and definitely connect on LinkedIn. And thanks so much for being here. And for all my listeners, please join me next week as I interview another industry expert on a topic to help you succeed on and offline. I'll see you in the pixels. Aloha.